Support Plan. Before we get started, I would like to dedicate tonight's event to the memory of Rebecca Novemsky. She was a dedicated advocate for the intellectual and developmental disabilities community for Essex County and the State Council. May 3rd is her birthday, and we will miss her. We miss her so much, and we'll remember her always. I will turn the meeting over to Eileen Hurley, who is our council vice chair. Eileen.
Okay, thanks, Yolanda. So yes, and Rebecca was a beautiful person, and she just advocated for us and mentored us, and we always think of her and miss her. So cheers, Rebecca. I'm sure you're looking down at us. So we appreciate our speakers today from Skylands and from Aspiring Journeys. And as Yolanda had said, this is all about creating a person-centered life plan for our adults with disabilities. And I think that they get left out often. And so we, just this is for individuals and for parents just to learn new ways in getting, to build a better life for their loved ones. And so I'm going to introduce our speakers. We have Danielle Weiss from Skylands and Alec Umanik. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. From Skylands Family Support, and Anna Marie Bisbub from Aspiring Journeys, and Karen Isaguirre from Aspiring Journeys. So as I said, I'm so sorry that if I did not get the names correct, but we do appreciate you being here, and we especially appreciate your just support coordination that is all about representing our kids and getting them to the best possible position in their lives. So thank you so much for joining us. So Danielle, did you want to get started or?
Sure, absolutely. So good evening, everyone. And I want to thank the council for allowing me an opportunity to connect with each of you. My name is Danielle Weiss, and I am a co-managing member of Skylands Family Support. And Skylands Family Support has been dedicated to providing support coordination services since 2012. And our team is made up of over 50 members, including myself and my partner, Alex, who is rooting for me over on the side, and directors, supervisors, SCs, administrators, and a majority of our team members have been with Skylands for 5 or more years. And I look forward to an interactive discussion on ways to think about and approach person-centered planning.
Thank you, Danielle. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Marie Canticchio Bishop, along with my partner, Karen Isaguirre. We have been operating for 8 years now in support coordination. We were brought to support coordination because we ourselves were support coordinators, and we had a passion to really take this to the next level for ourselves, to help each and every person. I have a brother with special needs, so he is 38, and he's been participating in the program for a long time. So I have a lot of history there as well. Karen and I wanted to start our agency to really, get to the heart of everything. We have this passion for, getting to know each and every family. And I believe that, together, she and I have been kind of driving this relationship home and creating those relationships with other people. Our agency is a smaller agency. We try to keep it small, keep our support coordinators. We're a tight-knit family. We happen to be a group of all women, and just per chance, and that's how it kind of happened. So, we're driving for women empowerment as well as, all the other people empowering other people. And so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you all. Thank you to the council. Thank you for individuals and families for joining us. And we're looking forward to this conversation. So let's talk about support coordination.
Should we jump right in and we'll talk about, so we weren't really sure exactly where each of the family members and individuals who are participating tonight would be coming from. So we talked about just giving just sort of like a very broad scope definition of what is support coordination. So easy definition, support coordination is a necessary service for individuals approved for DDD. Once an individual completes their DDD intake process in the NJCAT, that's when they get to select their support coordination agency. And so support coordinators will work with the individuals, their families, and their support team to identify services that can be purchased using their DDD allocated budget. And that's when the Individualized Service Plan, or ISP, and PCPT will be created. Anne-Marie, did you want to touch on what the ISP is and the PCPT briefly?
Sure. So the ISP, the Individual Service Plan, everyone, it's necessary for everyone to have one. It's part of, being a part of the system, the program. All of the support coordinators are trained. They're trained in-house as well as trained by the BOG Center to get certified to write the Individual Service Plan as well as the PCPT, Person-Centered Planning Tool. The Individual Service Plan, it basically is comprised of the individual's support needs, right? So most everything that you're answering on NJCAT, we're going to put that into the ISP. We're going to ask you questions about those types of things, the details. What does that look like? If your loved one needs support with something, what does it look like? If your loved one, or if you're the individual, if you are doing something independently, that's great. And we don't really have to tell them what it looks like because we're independent, right? So we want to keep it person-centered in terms of like what it looks like, just so that if somebody's looking at the individual service plan and the individual, cannot communicate with words or has struggles communicating, that a person that's supporting you or your loved one can look at it and say, okay, this is what I need to do when it's mealtime, or this is what I need to do when we're going out in the community, reminders about certain things. So we're gonna, your support coordinator and you and your planning team, you're gonna get together. You're going to talk about all of those things. So there are going to be some personal things in there because there are personal questions on the NJCAT. So you want to make sure that all that stuff is in, yes, it's in the NJCAT, but it also has to be in the ISP. It's, very important. We will discuss as well, employment goals. We're going to discuss all that types of stuff. New Jersey's an employment first state, so we do have to touch upon that. And each and every individual is different. And so all of their employment plans are going to look different. The services are going to look different. Or non-services are going to look different. So those are all very individual to, your loved one. The person-centered planning tool. No, I'm sorry, before I move on to the PCPT, I'm talking really fast and I probably missed some stuff. So Danielle, if you want to.
I just want to add
come
one
in.
thing real
Yeah.
quick, just real quick
Please.
about the ISP. So the ISP, for anyone who doesn't know, that's also where you're going to identify the service, and that's where you can see the allocated dollars. Specifically, you're going to see your outcomes, you're going to see the service lines, you're going to see your units, you're going to see your, your specific dollars. And that's where kind of you can monitor and track where your budget's where it's being spent. But it's also super important to remember that the ISP is a living, breathing document. And as your loved one or yourself grow and things change in their lives, the document itself also can be revised. So as their wants, your needs, your service selections change, so does the ISP.
Mm-hmm. And that's something important also to keep in mind too, when you're selecting services, when you're sitting down and planning with your support coordinator and your planning team. It will look different. It could look different from month to month. It can look different from year to year. And you can change that. You're not stuck. So if you find something that you think might work in the beginning, and then you want to go ahead and change it and have that conversation with your planning team, have that conversation with your support coordinator. You're not stuck in something for a year. You're not stuck in something for 6 months. It's a living, breathing document. We've talk about that all the time, and you can change things, and that's okay. And if things change in an individual's life and they have greater needs or lesser needs, and then we can change that as well. So it's not, you're not never stuck. You're never stuck. We
Right.
can always make changes to that. Now the person-centered planning tool, that's my favorite, because that's where you get down to like, what are your dreams? What are your hopes? What do you want to do in the future? Or, if that individual has a hard time expressing themselves, and then the family and the planning team, that's what's the great part about having the planning team, is that they can help to explain and express what the family and the individual want together as, as a whole. It takes a village. So, your village is going to be creating this plan. The
Mhm.
person-centered planning tool has, things that you want to happen right away, and things that, like, maybe in the future. Would you like to get a job in 2 years? Great. Would you like to move out on your own in 5 years? Even, more perfect. Would you like to just have some more friends, make some new friends, that kind of thing. So these are all those nuances that go into the PCPT. There's a lot more to it. Sure I'm forgetting some of the, most important things, but I believe that at this point, that is like definitely those are like the hot button things that we talk about a lot. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your wants? Who's in your circle? Who are your family? Who are your friends? All that stuff is listed in there, and that's important as well.
It's very
So-
much the other side, right? Like, so it gets to be that more, for lack of a better term, it's the touchy-feely. It's the, who is this person from the, like you said, the likes. What are you going to do all weekend? What do you want to do? How do you spend your time? And like you said, who's important to you? And so that's really, I enjoy the PCPT more too.
Yeah, the other stuff, we have to put it, right? It's clinical. We have to get to that stuff. We've got to talk about the NJCAT. We've got to talk about all of that. But then when we get to the PCPT is really, and there's a way, of course, when we're writing the ISP, that it's person-centered. Absolutely 100%. And we make sure that we address that. We make sure that it's not clinical. Even if it's important information to help support somebody, we want to make sure that it doesn't sound so clinical, that it is still person-centered. So we work towards, as support coordination agencies, we work towards, making it so you're not reading a medical document. You're actually reading something about an individual and their life. So that's the most important
Absolutely.
thing.
And I just want to piggyback that real quick. So if we have any younger parents who are just phasing in, your ISP might feel very, very different than your IEP. IEPs are written very clinically, 80% at 3 attempts, 5 times, and the ISP is really supposed to be written in your loved one's voice, not the clinician's voice. And no one is doing quarterly checks to verify percentage of accuracy. This is about, what are your long-term goals? And those outcomes and those services are how you're going to get there. But in the event that as you transition, you're like, this is so foreign, right? Just remember that it goes from being very clinical, like Anne Marie said, to allowing your loved one to actually have a voice as to what their paperwork looks like
Right.
and feels like.
And
Absolutely.
can I just say also, it's the family plan too, because some people we were talking about don't have a voice. So that's where we as parents, have an impact on what's going on as the voice
Right.
of our loved ones. So
Right.
a big component to it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, at any age that happens for, transitioning age, my kid's 30, my kid's 40, across the lifespan. So sorry to break in.
No,
that's
and
okay.
exactly. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Anne Marie.
I was going to say it. That's absolutely it. The most important thing is that planning team, whether it be guardians, whether it be siblings, whether it be friends, neighbors, people
Yeah.
from church, people that are in the individual's life that can help to voice those wants, needs, loves, everything. It doesn't matter how the individual communicates, as long as we get all of that information on there so that we can be sure that all of their support needs are being met, and not just support needs, but just their needs as a person, as a human being. That's the most important thing.
I think that's a perfect transition into what is person-centered planning and how does it happen and how do you go about it? What is it and how do you get there? Right?
Yeah.
And for us as SCAs, it's an understanding of like person-centered planning being a process that empowers people to plan their life and find a voice and work toward reaching goals. And, you know, to have your coordinator and your loved one and their entire team. And to Anne Marie's point, and it's funny because I have it written down, Anne Marie used it, so it was brilliant. It's a village, you know, it truly is the efforts of a village. You know, you say when you're raising young children, it takes a village, right? It takes a village to get through all of our lives. We're all reaching out to our support networks to get through things, and this is no different. When you're working with your support coordinator, you're going to want to lean on an entire team of people who know your loved one. We as support coordinators are new. We walk in and we don't know anything, right? Like we know how we do things, but we rely on you and your loved one and those who support your loved one and who support you to educate us on everything about your loved one.
Yeah. And it takes time. It takes time. Sometimes, you know, you're not going to get all that information in one meeting or two meetings. You know, every year we watch these plans build, and the plans are what the conversations are that you guys are having. You know, those wants, needs, loves, all that stuff that's important to the family, to the support team, to the individual. All those things are going to keep growing. They're going to change, like we said before, and they're also going to grow because we're going to get to know everyone, you know, and we're going to get to know the individual receiving all, you know, the services. And that's important too, to remember that, you know, you may have a friend that has this wonderful 10-year plan and it's like packed full of all this information and it's really great. And you have your loved one is just coming out of, you know, aging out 21, 22, and you're thinking, gosh, my plan, it's so small. There's not a lot of information on it because it grows as you that's what we're talking about. And it's a living document. It grows the longer you get to know somebody, the more information. It's hard to kind of put your whole heart out there to a stranger. So you have to build that relationship. And that's what the person-centered planning is, but it's also, you know, you're building relationships to welcome that support coordinator into your circle. You know, you're welcoming that support coordinator in, welcoming them into to supporting you, and you know, the support coordinator is going to support you in one way, and then you're going to explain to them how all the other people in the individual's life or the people that you need in the future. You know, we have people that ask for, can you help put us in connection with XYZ? We want to build our relationships, and maybe we put moms in touch with this council. You know, it depends on, you know, who the person is and what's going on, you know, in their life, and they want to build that. So we're here to help everyone build on making the future, you know, better. We want to be able to provide those resources, and that's kind of what I guess we could segue into that in terms of finding out a lot about the individual, finding out about who they are. We come into your home or wherever you're the most comfortable. We have those conversations to get to know who you are, so that then the support coordinators can then start providing those resources, brainstorming ideas. So that's that conversation. You're having a conversation. You're just sitting. It's not, you know, they're not just like typing all the time. You're going to have those conversations, those generic, organic conversations, which is how Danielle and I got to know each other and planned for this meeting, because we had generic, like we had those like conversations, those organic conversations. And that's how we knew that we were going to be, you know, good for presenting for you all, because that's how we work support coordination. And that's how we train all of our support coordinators.
So right to Anne Marie's point, so the how, right? So your support coordinator, your loved one, you, the entire support team, they're going to meet, going to have discussions, preferences, hopes, goals, dreams, needs, concerns, and collectively as the team, ideas sort of come forth, you know, naturally. By partnering with your coordinator and your SCA, those authentic relationships get to be built on mutual trust. You're allowing them to come into your personal space. And to Anne Marie's point, that doesn't always happen quickly. You know, sometimes you don't even realize what it is that you do to support your loved ones. Someone asks you a question, you're like, oh no, they can do that. And it isn't until you really have some longer discussions that you go, oh my gosh, I point. Or, oh my gosh, no, he does do that by himself. And by having that authentic relationship that's truly built on mutual trust, you're able to develop an ISP with depth and purpose. And to Anne Marie's point, it grows. Sometimes it takes some time and multiple meetings, but ultimately your relationship with your support coordinator should be considered a long-term, lifelong relationship. And that's the benefit of support coordination. You have 21 until forever, right? And if you're given, you know, if you are with an SCA that you feel you have this wonderful relationship and a partnership with, and an authentic understanding of one another, there's no reason to go anywhere.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's important to build those relationships with, you know, other people as well. You know, talking about, let's say you don't, you know, always mesh, to have that conversation with the support coordination supervisor. Discuss what it is that, you know, you're not meshing. There's always those opportunities to have those conversations so that you can be sure that, you know, you have that I'm sorry. You could be sure you have that relationship with the support coordination agency as a whole, not
Correct.
just the support coordinator.
Correct.
You know, unfortunately, sometimes things happen and somebody might, you know, leave, or someone, you know, has a baby, or, you know, whatever the situation. Lots of people have babies, right? So you have to, so you're building that relationship with your support coordination team also, you know, so you'll get
Yes.
to know people, and I think that's important too, to have that, you know, kind of open door, you know, oh, I can call someone if I'm not
Absolutely.
feeling like the covering support coordinator for the maternity leave lady is okay, you know, something like that. It's important because you have those relationships that you're building.
And Anne Marie, that is a great point, because it's also important to recognize depth within your agency, right? So that you know that you have not only your SC, but all of their peers, their supervisors, and that they have their own support system, so that maybe they don't have an answer. Because I can tell you that there are moments when coordinators walk in and they're racking their brains for, how am I going to help solve this problem, right? And they then turn to their team. So it is a wealth of information within your SCA, and you do want to create that relationship, like Anne Marie said. It's not only with your SC, but the people who stand behind your SC, because they're going to be relying on them to ensure that they are able to give you as many options, opportunities, ideas, whether they're programmatic or out of the box, goods and service related opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a part of, you know, something that not everybody sees. You know, if the individual's on the road or working remotely, things like that, I don't I don't know that it's explained to everyone that they do have a whole team. They're not just kind of riding on their own. You know, they've got all these other people, you know, and however the communication is, you know, with meetings, with meetups, you know, text apps, you know, all of that stuff, because everybody's like, hey, you know, tell me the best blah 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 in Essex County, you know. So you've got all these different resources to kind of pull from, also pulling from other support coordination agencies. So a lot of us are friends, so we will chat amongst each other as well and share resources. So I think knowing that it's not just this one person that's coming in, but there's all these people that they have to support them, just like your loved one has people to support them, you know. All right.
I almost started talking while I was on mute again. So,
That's funny.
all right, so I just want to say, and that again, to Anne Marie's point, like, you really want to align yourself with agencies who do have, you know, the finger on the pulse of not only their families, but the community. Knowing what is out there, knowing the resources, truly knowing opportunities that are in the community, allows for them to come in and into your space and share with you not only DDD deliverables, right? But when I walk down the street, you want an agency that's familiar with your neighborhood, familiar with your geography. So when you say, hey, I went to Bob's Corner Store, did you see Dan's dance studio, and did you see Susie's ceramics? You're all talking about the same thing. And you really want to be able to link yourself with agencies who know that, so that they can help you to really develop that person-centered thinking concept. And because of, self-direction and the move away from just day program and residential services, so many other opportunities are out there to individuals, to their families, to their parents, that had not been available in the past. And when you're working with your agency and you're working toward person-centeredness, you want to ensure that, like Anne Marie said, you recognize all of the wealth of information when selecting the SC and the SCA, because it's very important and it's super valuable that they understand your area, your geography, and your needs.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's very important. It's hard to brainstorm with someone who may not know the area as well. Not that they're not good, and they might be able to find those resources, but it is important to be able to do that, especially, coming around the holidays. We got a lot of requests for individuals who are looking for some like food services available for, Thanksgiving or Christmas presents for families, things like that. So even though those are not, they're not services that DDD can provide, but we know the community, right? So we can say, like, listen, we know somebody's used this last year. See if, you can get on the list for Thanksgiving. Here's the information for Thanksgiving, stuff like that. So it's important to do that. It's also really nice to grab a cup of coffee when you're out, doing visits and you run into someone that you work with, and it's kind of nice to be able to have that shared space and that community. And so I think that's important as well. So, those are definitely things to think about in terms of, location. Like Danielle said, it's definitely an important one for sure.
And I think it's worth talking, Anne Marie, just simply that there may be struggles, right? Like, so we talked about this relationship and person-centered being something that takes time and takes a mutual trusting relationship. But we also have to acknowledge that there may be struggles in either identifying an appropriate service, what is that service, or then finding the provider to deliver it once you know what it is that you want. And having an SCA alongside of you that understands that there will be struggles in your relationship, and navigating those difficult times with you is also an opportunity to really dial into person-centered planning. So, Anne Marie and I were talking about this, and we were like, well, what do you do? So you can't find the exact service that somebody's looking for. And so you have this interim period, right? And it doesn't mean that someone's not going to access something. That's when you start thinking out of the box, and the fact that your coordinator and your SCA truly know you and dive into person-centeredness. So what do you do in the meantime? How do we find ways for your loved one to access meaningful, fulfilling days? That's what person-centered is about, right? What makes you happy? What do you want to be doing? And maybe we have a provider in mind, but there's some time in between. So let's be creative. And we talked about it in the beginning. We may think we identify the perfect service. We've got the right program. We've got the right number of days. We even lined up transportation.
Right.
They go for 2 weeks and nope, guess what? We don't love it. But that's the beauty of a living, breathing document and having options. And person-centered planning is you call your coordinator and your SCA and you say, we need to make some changes. And you have a meeting and you make the changes and you keep it moving.
Right. And then you figure out, okay, well, and that's where that conversation comes in. Well, what didn't work? What was it that you didn't love? And how can we look for something that's going to maybe your loved one didn't like going 5 days a week. Maybe it was exhausting. Maybe it was tiring. I know I'm tired if I'm going 5 days a week. So let's look at that. Can you change it? Can you do something else 2 days? Can we explore other options? What does all of that look like? So you have that conversation would be, What does it look like? How can we make it better? How can we put a smile back on your face? You know, that type of thing. So what is the challenge? So you really like who, what, where, when, why, right? It goes back to that from what elementary school. You're
Mhm.
always kind of using those W's and trying to figure it out and asking questions. And that is really important too, because, you know, when you're having an active conversation, building that relationships, the individual asking you questions, so to say the support coordinator is asking you questions, it's important to have that back and forth, right? So they're going to say like, well, tell me what it is, tell me what it was feeling like. So that's what feels like person-centered to me, you know, is that we want to know what you were feeling. What can we do to make it better? How can we help? What kind of resources? You know, talking about thinking outside of the box. Let's brainstorm and like just jot down 25 things and then you can check them off the list and say, no, that does no, no, no. Oh yeah, let's explore that option. And then you kind of take it from there. Everybody is so unique and so individual that that's one of the beauties of the way that they've created this program. You know, I said my brother's
Absolutely.
38. So we've been in the system for a long time and there's been a lot of different programs. And this one is by far the best, you know, that they've come up with, trying to figure out what does it look like? What, you know, how can we make it as individualized as possible? And we have that opportunity to have those goods and services in there, which you didn't always have before. So those are some things that,
Absolutely.
you know, and that's where you can really make it individual, you know, not just, you know, those typical services, but we can kind of touch upon a little bit of everything, which is nice too, you know, and there's nothing wrong with going 5 days a week somewhere, but it's not for everybody. And so that's what the great part of this program is that you can do either or a little bit of both, you know?
It's the beauty of being able to create a week that that truly aligns with what you and your loved one want, right? So to your point, 5 days a week, that's wonderful. That's great. But maybe it's 3 days, 2 days of work, a gym membership, ceramics, and it's a slew of different activities. I mean, I have families saying, "Oh my gosh, the schedule is so busy now." You know, we're busy all of the time, but you know, that's what it really takes. And to Anne Marie's point, that those service and ideas are derived of conversation and getting to know and establishing and creating a long-term relationship with your team. It allows for service recognition. Did I freeze?
Sorry, Danielle, there was
Yeah,
a little bit of a,
froze a little bit there.
I
yeah.
thought so. Sorry, got that you have a bad connection
It happens, it's happening a little bit.
message.
So we didn't talk about this in housekeeping, but we do have a couple questions in the chat. Would you prefer they to be after your presentation or okay?
No,
So
yeah.
one is what is the difference between support coordination and support brokers? And do your agencies work with support brokers? That
Okay.
was one question.
That's a great question. So support coordination, support coordinators, right? They're like we talked about, the ISP, the PCPT, we're helping manage those service plans as well as providing resources, right? Managing that budget based on the individual's tier. Kind of putting all that stuff together. Now, support broker can, now, Danielle, please chime in at any moment if
No,
you want to.
absolutely, absolutely. So no.
So
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, support broker is a service that's payable through the budget, right? So the sports program or the community
Yes.
care program budget. So that's a
Yes.
service that's payable through there. Will we work with them? Absolutely. They will become part of your team, but they're getting paid out of that budget. So that's a conversation, you know, that you would have with your support coordinator. You're interested in that. Then the support coordinator would provide you with the resources to find the support broker that's in your area, right? And the support broker would come on board. Now, the specifics of what support brokers do, right, is I'll hand it off to you, Danielle. I don't want to talk the whole time. I
No,
don't.
that's okay. That's all right. So our experience, certainly, yes, we do have a number of individuals and families who elect to use support brokers. Oftentimes in our experience solely, it has been to potentially assist in identifying self-directed employees, to support the individuals maybe in their own residence, to assist them in obtaining apartments. So that is always a big hurdle. And support brokers are very good at assisting individuals in identifying community apartments that fall within the rental requirements. And I think sometimes there's the struggle to find some brokers on occasion. But yes, I would say that we certainly have experience, both of us working with them. And they, again, to the point, the difference is that we as coordinating agencies focus on the ISP, the PCPT, helping you to decide on those services, ensuring that they're accurately represented in your ISP, and that paperwork is truly developed to be a very good picture of who your loved one is.
Absolutely.
I hope that answered the question.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your flow because it's really good. So we have a few more. Do you want to just continue or do you want to answer these?
Anne Marie, I'm okay if we answer them.
Yeah,
What do you think?
sure. Sure.
Okay.
I think that'll be, yeah, we're having a conversation. That's great.
Okay, so there's a question of a person that wants to possibly switch their SCA. How do you find a good SCA in Camden County? So that's a question.
So
Okay.
Anne Marie, is it okay? I'll jump
Go
in
ahead.
first here real
Go
quick.
ahead.
All right. So
Go ahead.
I think ultimately, regardless of the county, right? I know that the question is very specific to Camden, but I'm going to answer the question globally. I think the best way is to do your due diligence. Make phone calls, see who answers the phone. If they don't answer, see who calls you back. Have a conversation. Again, all of this person-centered is built around relationships and the ability to communicate and converse genuinely, authentically, and with ease. So you do your due diligence, you do your homework, you call the agencies that are approved within that county. And I know you get a list of 700 pages with, a million agencies, right? But, you find who's in your county, you speak to your network. Who have they used? What have their experiences been? If you're still in school, you speak to your educational team. If you're at a program, you speak to your program. Now, you always take feedback with a grain of salt because everyone's experiences are slightly, they're personalized, right? But that's the best way, is to do your due diligence, talk, take feedback, and base that decision off of how you feel and who you think you can mesh with the best.
Okay. So Heather, do you want to chime in?
Hi, my name is Heather Gorski. I'm a support coordinator as well in the Southern area. My suggestion to finding a good support coordination agency is to also look into Facebook groups. Parents often, there's a few Facebook groups that parents are part of, and they're always asking for good support coordination agencies. And people always chime in of what they've worked with and what they haven't. So that's a good way to ask around about good support coordination agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Okay. All right. So are we good, or we have a lot of questions popping
Oh,
up.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably, we really talked about, I'm sure we have more to say, but certainly it's more important to get questions answered. Anne Marie, you
Yeah.
good with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
Okay.
think we really hit all the points, and now we
Absolutely.
want to hear from everybody, and that's what we're here for.
Okay. So we'll have a
Absolutely.
few more, and then I guess we can, okay, so all right, this is a long question. So my daughter graduates in 2 months. I've been looking at day programs, and it seems that the question is, will person fit the existing program? Well, there isn't a great deal of individuality offered, not much discussion about the PCPT. With such long wait lists for day programs, I question whether this is really, works within the system. So that's a comment. I guess if anybody has a.
Again, I think that that sort of goes to when we were talking about understanding that there will be some hurdles and trying to navigate. And sometimes we have to look at what do families what must you have, right? So if you have working parents or a parent and someone needs to be at work Monday through Friday and their loved one requires care 5 days a week, then we have to find program. If there's some flexibility in that, that's when we start talking about this person-centered process. And while maybe a program is what we want to eventually get to, but if we haven't found the perfect match yet, how do you create a meaningful day? How can we find other services that will fill the time appropriately, that offers both the family the support that it needs and the meaningful, fulfilling opportunities that your loved one wants?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And also just, for families that have people that are, loved ones that are coming out of the school system, there are a lot, especially this time of year. There were some challenges with, employment and finding employees. We did have a huge challenge coming out of that, 2020, 2021. There were a lot of programs that weren't open at full capacity. So there's going to be some extra, kind of like lag at that point in terms of, having programs fully staffed. So that's definitely has been a challenge. A lot of the programs are getting to the point where they're fully staffed now. So there are a lot of waiting lists, unfortunately. So that will 100% be a little bit of a challenge at first, and then of course finding the right fit. We recommend, we always recommend seeing if the program will allow your loved one to try it for an hour or 2 hours or half a day, even a full day, just to see if they mess well. Everybody's personalities are different. It's very individualized in terms of what you need, what your loved one needs. And so looking at it in that respect, you might try for a day and realize, okay, this isn't what I need. And as what Danielle was saying, then maybe you'll get to know what you need from what you saw you didn't need, visiting. So there's a
Absolutely.
lot of different things that you can do. There's a lot of ways to be able to, build that day where, if the caregivers are working full time and working during the day and you want to build that day, you can still build a day where, your loved one is busy while are at your job. So there's a lot of different ways to sit down and really figure it out. And, again, to steal your word, but think outside of the box, right? Because that's what we want to do is think outside of the box to make sure that the individual is, feeling happy and cared for and safe.
Anne, you make a great point though. So those who are transitioning, so specifically back to the question, it can be really challenging, but you made a really great point in terms of trial days. And if depending on your transition team, your coordinator, and the connections that they may have, there have been times when we've had students transitioning in who were able to go trial days while still in school. So as opposed to waiting until June when oftentimes there's that uneasy, anxious, oh my gosh, what am I going to do feeling? Some of that can be handled or addressed through your transition team, allowing for certain days and trial days or trial hours, right, at a potential program. That is also hugely beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you can see a little more when you spend a few hours instead of just a walk through.
Absolutely. And Anne-Marie, you made a really great point about recognizing what didn't work. So it's not always about what did, but maybe what didn't. And whether it was something that maybe a program didn't have, but maybe it was something that just wasn't right. Maybe it's too small. Maybe it's too bright. Maybe the lights make a sound that you didn't even think of. But focusing on some of those little nuances that you don't expect in terms of what didn't work will also truly help you to identify what will.
Absolutely. Hope that helped.
Excellent. So we have, can you talk about how important it is to be honest about your loved one's needs when answering the questions on the NJ CAT?
Yes.
Danielle, if
Yes.
you don't mind, I'll do that because I am a daughter of a very proud mom. And
Mhm.
I have explained to her time and time again that, you need to be honest. My brother will
Yes.
not shower for 2 weeks if we don't force him
Yes.
to shower. Now, is he independent? Can he, wash himself? Sure. But he's not getting into the shower physically by himself. He's not even, regulating the water temperature. So, I'm sure he would forgive me for using him as an example, but that is the example that I have as a daughter seeing my mom, talking to her support coordinator, and I'm saying, Mom,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I lived here,
Yeah.
don't forget.
Yeah.
And so
But it's
that
very
is really
hard to
important.
say that.
It is.
It's
It's
hard to
really
say to your
hard.
mom, now's not the time to be the proudest mom. Now is the
Right.
time to acknowledge all of your brother's abilities, right? But
Right.
all of the things, I think the hard part, and to your mom's point, might be that so many of the things she doesn't know she does, right? She's been doing
Of
them for
course.
so long.
So long.
So, you have to take that step back and be
Mhm.
like, it's your exact point.
Right.
When you're talking to
Right.
families, you weren't home, what
Right.
would happen?
Right. Exactly. If
Or
you
on
weren't
the
home on
worst
the
of the,
worst day.
yes, yes.
Yeah, yes. Yes. So,
Yes.
it's, and I want to put it out there because there are so many of you on the call. There's never absolutely no judgment. It doesn't matter what you do for your loved one. It's okay. Like, it is absolutely okay. Like, there's no judgment there. We want to make sure that the needs that your loved one are receiving are the needs that they need, so we want to make sure that their tier level matches their needs. We want to make sure that, we're writing down what is important to be able to keep your loved one safe and healthy and
Absolutely.
all those other things. It's, that it's person-centered. As long as we're documenting it in a person-centered way, I don't think there's any reason why we can't document all of those details, because those are things that are
Absolutely.
important. God forbid if your voice isn't there and your loved one doesn't have that voice, we want to make sure that it's documented somewhere
Yeah.
in case we need it. My brother will say, yeah, I could take a shower. Oh, sure. When does the last time you took a shower? I don't know. 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, all right, get in the shower, dude. So we have to remember that this is like a judgment-free zone. We're never judging what's going on in your home. We
Absolutely.
just want to know how to make sure that your loved one never has a gap in care. That's really
Absolutely.
important. That's super important. And that goes for everything, medical, health, behavioral, all of it. Even just going out into the community. Does your loved one have to hold somebody's hand when they cross the street? That's okay. There's no judgment ever. That's all I
I
have to say
think
about
no, I 100% agree with you. And I think sometimes parents struggle with the grayness
Yeah.
of the questions, right? So they're
Mhm.
like, well, sometimes. And that's when you weigh on the side of, if it doesn't happen 100% of the time independently, then it doesn't.
And it's not
Right.
independent.
And it's okay.
Mhm.
And it's okay to acknowledge that. And to Anne Marie's point, no one is saying there is not a single ounce of judgment. We are here to
Mhm.
ensure that that cat represents your loved one. Because then in all honesty, DDD's expectation is that every other document that's created matches that cat, because
Right.
that is who your loved one is on an assessment. Right. So you
Mhm.
want to ensure that from an assessment standpoint, you do your dead level best to represent your loved one at home, alone, on the worst day.
Right.
Even if that's the
Absolutely.
hardest assessment you ever take.
Right. And it's not easy. And we get that. It's not easy. And it could be a little bit emotional, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
But we want to make sure that, your loved one is getting the care that they need
Absolutely.
and that they deserve.
Yeah, I think it's also challenging for parents that as their individuals or loved ones age, now we're in our 30s, and we have to think of what happened with us when we were 30. Things change from our 20s. And I think that for our adults, there's just this perception that nothing really changes with them. And, I think it's important that parents, and family members of their loved ones make sure that everything moves through the life stages for our kids, even though they might not be able to communicate that. I think it's a real problem with young adults, that the perception is, okay, they're not going to learn much more now. I think that is something that's an issue for folks, of people that have high level of need, as you're talking about a person-centered plan and making sure that your individual has a productive, creative, lively lifestyle. And, if there's not much out there for them, how do we get that? I think that's a big question that,
Eileen, I just want to answer your first point about your loved one changing. Always know that if there are changes with your loved one, that you can request a reassessment. That just because you did an NJCAT and you are tiered at whatever level, because this is how you were presenting at 21, does not mean, to your point, that at 55, those circumstances, 30, 40, I am not the same 21-year-old.
right.
I would need a new cat, right? So know that it's important for you as loved ones and as a voice to circle back to that cat. If you don't have a copy, ask for one. If it's been 5, 6, 7 years, really look at it. Or if there's been marked changes in levels of support, you really circle back and dive into that. There is a process to have your loved one reassessed.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge that too. As individuals change and their families change and their family dynamic changes, and maybe there were two parents and now there's only one parent, or maybe there was, or maybe another guardian came in the picture, so it looks a little bit different. So, I think it's definitely important, like Danielle said, to address that. I think it's 100% important. And also talking about and kind of changing a little bit and going over to that like lively, active day. It doesn't have to be, lively and active. A successful day for someone may be that they're just really happy and safe, and that might be, and that's okay too. So everybody, and that's why we talk about being an individual plan, because everybody's happy, everybody's safe, everybody's, entertainment, whatever it is, whatever it looks like is different, so as long as maybe just companionship is something, maybe having somebody sit down and watch the Hallmark Channel with, like you want to just think about that too, in terms of it doesn't have to be active. So don't feel like they have to be going, but
Absolutely.
thinking about someone who's happy, thinking about what it is that makes them happy, and I had an individual that I supported years ago, and what made him happy was watching Barney. And then we made sure all the time that that's what it was in his plan, and that made him happy, and that there was backups, because it was CDs and they get scratched, right? So we want to just make sure that there's, and that's what happy and safe looked like for him. So we just want to make sure that that's, addressed as well, that everybody's happy, safe, all of that looks different also.
Absolutely. And I think when we first started, we talked about identifying like must-haves, right? When you're starting your planning process. And if some of that is my loved one, they're safe, I have to go to work, I know where they are, their needs are being met, their hygiene needs are met, they're fed, they're cared for, I know where they are, I don't have to worry. Sometimes that's a successful day, right? So if for some reason it sounds like we're suggesting that people need to be busy all the time, that's not. It's about what works for your family. And that circles all the way back to why we're here, right? We're talking about person-centered. And it's not only the person. It's
Mhm.
their people. And what makes that dynamic in that household happy, safe, successful, meaningful, and
Mhm.
able, right? Like,
Right.
because if we create all these things that don't actually work, we haven't done anything, right? Like to
Right.
keep someone busy
Right.
who doesn't enjoy that, we totally missed our mark on person-centeredness.
Right.
So it's really about what are our must-haves and what do we need? And that looks so different for each and every individual.
100%.
Absolutely.
Well, Cortez, I saw you raise your hand before. If you want to unmute and ask your question.
Okay. Okay, I was really trying to kind of type it out. I want to try and make it short and brief. Um I don't like to talk to me. I don't like to talk about myself as the disabled person, but I am. And y'all are talking about good things. But the one thing I always ask, and this is personally to me, I think people should ask, but a lot of times our question is about how do you support a person that's not typical? And when I say not typical, not just verbally or socially, it's a person that could be an out of control teen or breaking their mother's rules. I know that sometimes the stereotype, like you said, is a disabled person is more easy to control or manage. But a lot of times, the hard thing in my life, what I found out is that for me to have any kind of success that I had, I almost had to be more aggressive at times than people expect me to be. And a lot of times people expect a disabled person to be timid in a conversation. And I wasn't like that. That was my question of how do your company approach that matter instead of a parent, even if a parent comes to your program wanting help for their loved one, or uh, they they got the right documents to get the right programs through agencies of these days. So I apologize. I mute myself.
Well, don't
No,
apologize.
that was
No,
great.
no. Yeah.
That
That
was
was
great.
yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. And I'll let Danielle talk as well. But for me,
So
when our support
yeah,
coordinators go through that conversation and they sit down and they have that conversation. So we have to, like you said, get the paperwork and get everything accomplished. But so that person's plan is going to look different than someone else who is, more timid, right? So we're going to discuss that. What does that look like for you? Do you feel like you have to, be that way because you want to keep yourself safe? And that's okay too. So just kind of having those conversations and figuring out, how can we
absolutely.
help support you? And what does that look like for you? So that would be something that you would have a conversation with your coordinator is how can they support you? Is it just, we're going to come chat with you once a month and you can talk to us about what you need? Do you want to get together with, some of your close-knit family or friends or neighbors or church, whomever you work with, you hang out with, and have those conversations? How can we help support you to make you feel successful? So, Danielle, sorry.
No, absolutely. So, and Cortez, I would say the same thing. It's really that they would come in and they would talk and ask open-ended questions and find out from whomever this person is, what do you want? What do you like? How can I help you? Right. So not only are the coordinator and the team going to be saying, what do you like? What do you like? But the flip side is, what can I do for you? Right? Or what can we do for you? Do you know what you want? Have you thought about that? How do you feel about working? And that's how through, like Anne Marie and I have said, is conversation and meaningful relationships would help to identify what's important and how to make you or whomever feel successful in whatever it is that you needed.
Mhm.
Thank you for your response. I say that's a good path, but a lot of times I sadly had people around me either die on the streets from gun violence or gangs, or people like you said, we are slowly moving away from the day programs, and I hated it. Um, but I think that sometimes um, you gotta allow people to walk away from you to realize they need help, and I think that sometimes in this in this environment of trying to help, sometimes it's hard to help when you're a young teenager going through bipolar or whatever disablement that you have. And society is always expecting you, whether you're a woman, to be as social, or you're a man dealing with disability and you're dealing with your own body image, or you're in school and every guy has money, has a girl, want to be popular, want to go out there, want to be social, and you're looking at yourself as an individual and in your own family, and you're like, I'm the problem child. And I know that sucks, but and I know that on the feedback, when someone is trying to help you and they see a light or see a brightness in your life that you can have, it's kind of hard to actually make that person see what you believe about them. I think that thank you for allowing me into this conversation. It's just that that's the other side of the coin. I don't think people talk about. I recognize the abuse that y'all go through when y'all are acting like angels and y'all are angels trying to help people, but in the chaos of learning about your own disability and then feeling the pressure from society or your own family. And a lot of times my family was supportive, but I come from an African background, so I had the white issue, culture issue, I had the man issue, I had to deal with all that. So for me, I'm trying to be an advocate, and I'm trying to open up the space to really bridge the gap so people can get help, but all that anger and all that disconnect can actually have a real conversation of, yeah, my kid is cutting class, and maybe I'm talking about a kid that's more high functional, but not every disabled person is on TV that needs someone to hold their hand or something like that. If you're living in the Bronx and you're seeing violence or something like that, and you're disabled and your lifestyle is fractured, and your mom has to go to work and you got, bring home the money, and then that kid is seeing that, and then you're trying to help. I think that is hard. And I think that people sometimes have to recognize culture just to help that person. And like you said, I like what you said. Sit down with that person,
Mhm.
talk with that person, and not be so offended that person is not just going to look at your hand and be grateful towards you.
Really good points, Cortez.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, do we have any other questions?
Hello.
Natalie?
Hi, Natalie. Hi.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. It's so nice to see your face.
Yes. You see, I have PJs.
That's great. Well, I'm so glad you could join us and listen
Yep.
in. That's great. And I'm glad you said hello.
Yes. Anne Marie.
Yeah.
This Friday, I couldn't do online dances this month because the DJ's gonna have surgery for his heart.
Oh, that's a bummer. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a bummer. You should have a little dance party in your living room.
Mm-hmm. When you after heart surgery, you gotta be on a diet.
Yes, that's very important. It's very important. for sure.
You have to eat only good carbs.
Those are my favorite kind, the good ones.
Good carbohydrate complex.
Absolutely. It's great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Also, there are fruits and vegetables that doesn't matter.
Yes, that's true. That's a good point.
Protein you could eat, but not red meat.
No, chicken and fish. That's the most important, right?
Yeah. Salt. We have to the salt.
Yes, salt is not good for anybody. It makes me puffy.
Salt and
Makes other things
sugar.
puffy too.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Salt, sugar, olive oil is good, but no olives.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Olives like in a can. That's a lot of salt.
You're right. I didn't think about that. I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks.
You are a wealth of information.
Oh,
Yes.
Natalie, she knows so much.
I love it.
Oh, hello.
Hi. It's
My
very
name
nice
is
to meet
Natalie.
you.
What's your name?
Hi, Natalie. I'm Danielle. It's very nice to meet you.
You too.
I heard you talk about social building. I think that's very important. I think that going to school, being different, and realizing my difference, and going through that challenge was very hard. I think that sometimes because when you're a teenager and you're antsy, you don't really know much. And you talked about, the transition after school. And a lot of times parents expect like their kids to go up with college, do a trade school, something like that, and to be able to support themselves to move out, be successful, have a healthy healthy, functioning love life. The S word, I understand this is PG-13, but the health of a person to understand another person. I think that that's lacking sometimes. So when it comes down to you building social connections, I find it hard in this day age of demographics when it comes to programs. When I talk about that, they're saying that it's not really my responsibility, it's mine. And yes, that's true. But what would your agency's answer to that question be? Sorry.
Can I jump on that one real
Okay.
quick? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
sure. Of course.
So, funny enough, we've had some individuals who say very similar things, right? Like I want to go to trade school, or I want to date. I want to date, but I don't know how to date, or I don't know where to find people. And I need to be, parents worry about, we need to be safe, or caregivers are worrying about, oh my goodness, how do we navigate all of that? So many of the things that Cortez, that you mentioned are actually accessible. Okay, so whether you do that from employment services through DBRS, or whether those services are through goods and services, we have experience with individuals getting associate's degrees, getting access to cooking classes so that they can get a job. We have people working with life coaches so that they can understand how to date safely, or what does a relationship look like. So certainly there are things, and even you had mentioned mental health, right? So with an agency and a team behind, an individual, they'll be able to potentially provide some options, or some services, or some meetings that someone could go to, whether you mentioned, addictions, or and violence and things like that. And with a coordinating agency that knows the community, they may be able to align an individual with some services that have nothing to do with DDD, but are very impactful to an individual as a whole person. right? Not just a deliverable service. So I hope
Right.
that answered your question.
Yeah,
Right, it did.
absolutely.
I mean, that's very impactful because I'm 37 years old. I've been hearing the opposite. Even discovering my own I'll try and be PG, sexual function and my own sexuality and even going that route and exploring it and going out here, learning how to be a man, be respectful, but at the same time hold my own opinions. It's kind of hard because I don't fit the model. I'm not someone that's drooling or, someone that needs a lot of help. I need a lot of guidance sometimes. Because I don't
Sure.
always make
Mhm.
decisions. But a lot of times when I bring up these subjects, I'm nervous because I'm not trying to take over the phone call and, because these are parents
It's okay.
taking care of
Mm.
individuals, but I'm an individual that didn't
Mhm.
have that parent. So I had to basically negotiate my own path
Mhm.
of needing help and going to these conversations and not always have the best intentions of being pleasing and know how to play the game of knowing what you want from me and what I can get from you. But a lot of times, because I had that attitude when I was younger, I got really scarred and really not emotional, available at times with other people when they wanted to talk about my future plans. Because I was looking at it like, I got to get this money, I got to pay this rent. That's really about it.
Mhm.
And talking with parents, it does make me understand what God bless my grandmother, and she passed away, but it made me understand what she had to fight through just to get me to this point as a man being functional in society. When at one point I was either going to be 6 feet under or in a jail cell of hurting someone because I couldn't regulate my own emotions and I didn't care about the community or people. And I think that sometimes uh, we got, I think that parents in my mind, sometimes gotta step back and just look at the trauma of the kid and just say, if I was in that situation, how much hurt, how much pain can I
Mhm.
feel and feel helpless enough to not reach out to a program? And your programs sound good and all, but if I keep having this and that and programs that tell me I can't do this and the parents frustrated at the time,
Mhm.
the coordinator is frustrated because they don't have this outsource of, okay, this is stick on a program or this
Mhm.
tell them to go to Walmart and get a job. And for me, I thought that was ridiculous. I was like, I'm a man. I want to have a career. I want to have
Mhm.
something that when I have a wife, I have kids, I have
Mhm.
value to the community and to my family. And a lot of times, because I speak that way, I felt like uh, until now, a couple months ago, I presented my own story at a conference and I almost didn't cry because that's the first time I ever felt like, as a person and just as an individual, growing up with my own scars, that I was fully represented, not as a disabled person, not as a Black man, not even just as a man, but just as a person
Right.
sharing a lived experience with other people.
Well, I
Cortez,
want to
Great.
commend you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're really
Commend you
really
for that.
inspiring. I mean, Annette, maybe we can get Cortez's email address. Maybe he would like to join you in your NJCDD effort. He seems to,
Yes, I
he
really
seems to be
would
very
because sorry.
outspoken, you know?
I really,
Mhm.
I really was because some of your ideas, now I'm trying to go back to school. And because of my learning disability and because of my writing and skills like that, I'm not really up to grade. And it's kind of hard because DDDs keep saying, I need to fit this bill. And if we feel like we invest in you and you're a stock market and you're going to crash, I still don't match their standard.
I just want to say thank you. I think this has been a wonderful opportunity to share Anne Marie, and ironically we have found one another through you guys, and it's very interesting to see, you know, they're to be able to be here and speak to families about what we think and how we do things and what person-centered planning really is, and what it feels like. So I just really want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here and to participate.
Yes, I'd like to second that. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really wonderful. I haven't gotten a chance to speak to a large group in a while, so it was exciting, to say the least, you know, a little nerve-wracking at first, but everyone was so welcoming and wonderful, and I love that we got the opportunity to connect and get to know each other. Danielle and I got to know each other really well. And so I'm sure that this is a blossoming friendship also. So, you know, thank you for that. And, you know, it was really nice to be able to talk about our passion, you know, and what we do.
Yeah.
And the whole reason why we started our own agency, Karen and I,
Correct.
is because of that, because of the passion that we have for this. And you can, I'm sure that most of you could see on our faces when we're talking, it's that we really do love it. And it's not just, you know, a job, it's our life, you know, and I thank you for listening. I thank you for being patient. Thank you for asking your questions. I enjoyed myself. So thank you very much.
Yes, so I just wanted to say on behalf of Council Floor and all of our families here, just thanks so much for taking the time to make us feel good about the process, and know that there are really good, inspiring, empathetic support coordinators out there for us. You know, because a lot of times you want your hand held a little bit as a parent, or even as a, yeah. It never gets old, and it's really, you know, we really feel good about the fact that there's good people in this industry that really have their heart in the right place and want to do the best thing for our loved ones. I'm starting to choke up here a little bit. So also, you know, we would love to have some kind of, we were talking about maybe having a series or something down the road with different
Oh,
topics.
great.
You know, look out for the next email from us.
Happy to
Absolutely.
participate. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
We do have something that I want to just plug that's coming up this coming Monday. So we also, Family Support Planning Councils, have a family action group, which is part of the Charting the Life course, community of practice. And our action group is having an outreach. The topic is the community of practice for supporting families. It's a virtual meeting on May 6th at 7 p.m. We're going to teach effective person-centered advocacy to families with loved ones that have disabilities throughout the lifespan. We like to say from birth to earth, and so what we're trying to accomplish is just to educate people on how to strategize to effectively advocate and discuss kind of how we got there with our support coordinators, with our teachers, with our therapist, whatever, you know, and how to design that plan and how to effectively, you know, get from A to B to C. So,
Absolutely.
that is happening this May 6th at 7. And I think, Carrie, do we have a flyer that we can just kind of maybe share?
Yes, I shared the Zoom link and then I shared the flyer as well.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, great.
Great. Thank you.
So join us, and thank you for your, you know, thank you for your inspiration, and thank you for just working so hard to help us all, seriously, and we appreciate it. Okay.
Thank